My husband wants me all the time. I love my husband. He's a good man, hardworking, loyal, and devoted to our family. But there's one thing I've never been able to say out loud, not even to my closest friends. His sex drive is exhausting me. For years, I thought I was the problem. I thought maybe I wasn't fun enough or that something was wrong with me. But the truth is, I'm tired. And sometimes when the sun goes down, I feel more dread than desire. I know that maintaining intimacy and passion is important in marriage, but what I'm experiencing is far from normal. During our 10 years together, my husband has always been affectionate, loving, and had a stable sex drive. However, in the past 3, 4 months, he has suddenly become insatiable. His needs have skyrocketed unexpectedly and seemingly have no end in sight. He wants sex 4 to 5 times a day, and this happens almost every day. Every morning when I wake up, before I can fully open my eyes, I feel his hands start to caress me, accompanied by whispers of desire. He tells me that he desires me, that he can't resist. At first, I find it cute and somewhat romantic. Who doesn't want to be desired by their husband, right? But when it happens every day, even multiple times a day, I start to feel tired and stressed. After waking up, I usually go down to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, but even then, he doesn't let go. He often comes from behind, hugs me tightly, his hands start to wander, and many times he suggests do it quickly, right in the kitchen, as long as the child doesn't see. There are times when I have to remind him that the child is still at home, that this is not the right time or place, but it seems like he can't control himself. I start to feel like I no longer have my own space. Every action, every moment of the day can become an opportunity for him to demand that. I no longer feel comfortable being around my husband, not because I don't love him, but because I feel like I'm being consumed both physically and mentally. I even had to change my routine, like taking a shower when he was at work just to have some quiet time for myself. I wondered, is this normal in a relationship? I had heard that men tend to lose interest in sex as they get older, but my husband was the opposite. He became more and more passionate as he got older. This made me worry. Is there something wrong with his health or psychology that I haven't noticed? I don't want to hurt him by denying or complaining too much, but I can't keep putting up with this fatigue forever. I love my husband, but I also need to rest, to feel like a wife, not just an object of desire. And that's why I started looking for advice from experienced people, from experts, or from anyone who could help me understand and deal with this situation in the most gentle and effective way. After tiring mornings because of being awakened by desire, I thought that when my husband went to work, I would have some quiet time to rest and regain energy. But no, his demands did not stop there. It seemed that for him, every moment of the day could become an opportunity for physical intimacy. And what surprised me was that he not only expressed it through actions, but also through gestures, words, and even messages continuously, nonstop. When I was cooking, cleaning, or simply standing in the kitchen, he often came from behind, hugged me tightly. His hands began to wander all over my body. There were times when I was cutting vegetables, holding a knife in my hand, but he still did not hesitate to come close, whispering sexy words in my ear. He often suggests doing it quickly in the kitchen or anywhere in the house where the child cannot see. I have to constantly remind him that the child is still at home, that we need to maintain privacy and respect the family space. But it seems that those reminders only work for a moment, then everything goes back to normal. I began to feel like I was no longer a wife, a mother, but just an object for him to satisfy his desires. This made me both sad and worried. I understand that intimacy between husband and wife is necessary, but when it becomes a pressure, a constant demand, the feeling of love is gradually replaced by fatigue and stress. Not only stopping at actions in the house when he went to work, I still could not be released. He constantly texted me, not asking about the children or housework, but sexy messages, even somewhat hot. He told me he missed me, that he was imagining me in provocative positions, that he couldn't wait to get home to get it off. At first, I found it amusing, a way to keep the fire burning in our marriage. But as the frequency of the messages increased day after day, I began to feel the pressure. I couldn't concentrate on housework, taking care of the kids, or even resting, because every few minutes there was a message from my husband that I had to respond to. Otherwise, he would call to ask why I hadn't responded. I began to wonder, was this still normal passion between husband and wife, or had it gone beyond over the limit? I don't want to hurt him, but I can't continue to live in a state of being constantly pursued like that. I need to breathe, to live like a normal woman, not always ready for sex. And I began to realize that if we didn't find a way to solve it, our relationship could gradually become unbalanced, not because of a lack of love, but because of too much uncontrolled desire. After long days of living in the feeling of being surrounded by my husband's relentless desire, I began to feel like I was gradually losing myself. From a woman who loved life and was active, I became tired, irritable, and often stressed. I no longer felt interested in sex and sometimes even felt scared every time I heard my husband's footsteps coming home. This made me extremely tormented because I knew I still loved him, still cherished this marriage, but my body and spirit were protesting. I started to learn, read articles, share on women's forums, and even secretly consulted a psychologist online. I wanted to understand. Was my husband having any psychological or health problems? Was he falling into a state of sexual desire disorder? Or was this just a temporary phase due to work pressure, age, or hormonal changes? Those questions kept lingering in my mind every day, making me unable to rest in peace. I also started to try to change the way I behaved. Instead of outright refusing, I gently shared my feelings with him. I said that I loved him, but I needed to rest, needed my own space to recharge. At first, he seemed to not understand, even angry, thinking that I was being cold, not loving him as before. But after many conversations, I realized that he really did not mean to tire me out. He just did not realize that his needs were exceeding his partner's tolerance limit. We started to set soft rules in our married life, no demands when the children were awake, no sexy texting during work hours, and most importantly, respect each other's feelings. I also encouraged him to have a general health checkup, especially his hormones and psychology, to make sure everything was okay. Luckily, he agreed, and the results showed that he was completely healthy, just going through a physiological explosive phase due to changes in male hormones in middle age. From then on, we learned to adjust to be more compatible. I also tried to take care of myself, exercise, and eat moderately to improve my health and spirit. As I felt better, I also found it easier to accept him, no longer reluctantly, but willingly, lovingly. I realized that in marriage, it is not always sweet days. There will be times when one of us changes, and it is important for both of us to adjust, listen, and understand each other. Love is not only about passion, but also about patience, sharing, and companionship, even when the other person is over loving. After both of us sat down, shared, and adjusted to find balance in our married life, I felt much more relieved. The frank conversations, the times of listening to each other without judgment, helped us better understand each other's needs, feelings, and limit. However, I also realized that to maintain long-term harmony, it is not just about temporary adjustments, but also about a process of rebuilding connection, both physical and mental, in a sustainable and healthy way. I started to pay more attention to nurturing our emotions outside of sex. Instead of letting sex become the center of the relationship, I tried to create gentle moments of intimacy, such as cooking together, going for an evening walk, or simply watching a favorite movie. I realized that when emotions are nurtured properly, physical intimacy becomes more natural and enjoyable, no longer an obligation or a burden. My husband also changed. He started to care more about my emotions, no longer being as aggressive or demanding as before. He learned to control himself, to wait, and to respect my emotions. The suggestive messages were gradually replaced by gentle inquiries, simple but warm, loving words. I felt the maturity in the way he expressed his feelings, no longer possessive but companionship. We also learned more about sex, marriage psychology, and midlife sexual health together. Understanding each other's bodies and psychology helped us not feel embarrassed or ashamed when talking about our personal needs. Instead, we learned to share openly, honestly, and respectfully. This not only improved our sex life, but also deepened our relationship. I also learned an important lesson. In marriage, nothing is natural, but have forever. Love, harmony, passion all need to be nurtured, adjusted, and renewed constantly. Without understanding and effort from both sides, even the deepest love can become a burden. Now, when I look back on the past time, I no longer feel tired or resentful. Instead, I feel grateful because we did not give up on each other when things became difficult. We overcame a challenging period together to understand each other better, to love each other more properly. And I believe that those times that seemed too much to bear were opportunities for my husband and I to mature, bond, and be stronger than ever. After all the efforts to adjust and understand each other, my husband and I have gradually regained balance in our married life. However, I also realized that to maintain that harmony for a long time, we cannot stop at solving a specific problem, such as sex pillow. Marriage is a long journey where each stage has its own challenges, and if not actively nurtured, it is easy to fall into boredom, distance, or emotional imbalance. That is why I started to think more seriously about renewing the relationship between husband and wife in a comprehensive way. Not only renewing emotions, but also renewing the way of life, the way of loving, the way of caring for each other every day. I do not want my relationship to stop at stable or temporarily satisfied, but I want it to continue to develop, deepen, and become more sustainable over time. I proactively create small surprises for my husband, sometimes a romantic dinner, a handwritten card, or simply a tight hug after a long day. Those seemingly small things make him emotional and feel loved. In return, he also begins to learn how to express his feelings more subtly, no longer focusing only on physical needs, but paying attention to emotions and spiritual connection. Soul, we also spend time experiencing new things together, traveling together, taking a cooking class, or even reading a book about marriage and sharing our feelings. These activities not only help us bond more, but also create beautiful memories, keeping our love fresh and inspiring. I realize that when both of us make an effort to renew our relationship, the passion does not disappear over time. It just transforms into a deeper, more lasting form. It is no longer an impulsive desire, but a desire to be accompanied, to share, and to be loved completely. Most importantly, I learned to love myself. I understand that a happy woman is not someone who always indulges her husband's every wish, but someone who knows how to listen to herself, knows how to say no when necessary, and knows how to create boundaries to protect her inner peace. When I know how to love and take care of myself, I also become a good wife, a more loving mother, and a more trustworthy partner. Marriage, after all, is not a place for someone to possess someone, but a place where two people grow together, overcome difficult times to reach deep understanding and attachment. And I believe that the initial challenges, despite being tiring and stressful, are the foundation for us to build a mature, sustainable, and humane love.